One of the best scenarios that I can tell you about when it comes to utilizing Smithers in your environment is especially for help desks. So we actually have a help desk where they use it for nights and weekends. So this is your off time support. So these call centers, they ramp up, and a lot of times they don't necessarily have that level of support on nights and weekends because it's expensive, right? To be able to manage that. So an AI solution is great for that as an augmentation of their team. And so what they were able to do in literally 5 minutes is to implement Smithers into their environment as a help desk.
So, hi everyone to the AI and Digital Transformation podcast. I'm your host, Angelique, and together with me is Gabriele.
Hello, everybody.
For this episode, we will be speaking to Oz Brown, who is, correct me if I'm wrong, the founder of Meet the Smithers. So it's like a chatbot, right?
Yeah, that's correct. It's meetsmithers.com. Correct. Absolutely.
Okay. So before we begin, maybe you could briefly tell us about you and like your background and everything, so people would know who Oz Brown is.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, if you search for me online, you're going to see, that I do a couple of things. I definitely do a lot with music as well, too. So that's something that I love to do. But I've been always involved in tech for a very long time. So I've been working on software since about 1997. I originally wrote back in 1999, I think, was some original software that started off with this whole voice and automation types of capabilities. I've always just loved that space of being able to have a computer. I'm a Trekkie. Let's just face it. That's really what it boils down to. I'm a stone Trekkie, and I always loved that computer in Star Trek where you could talk to it and it would be able to, provide you with answers that were detailed and scientific and whatever, right? So that really brings out the geek in me. So I could go on for months about Star Trek, so I won't. But the point is that whole line of technology has really been where it's been a major focus of mine for over 20 years now. And the technology now has come to the point where there's some things now that you're able to do with the whole automation of, AI plus machine learning that you're able to do that really brings out a lot of capabilities for businesses as well as individuals as well. So we're really in that space. That's what Meet Smithers is all about, is being able to just capitalize on the ability of software to be able to augment both your sales as well as your help desk teams. So that's what Meet Smithers is all about.
So, great introduction, Oz. Could you start describing like an example of where you applied successfully this technology, so we can start from there and discuss the advantages and what it takes to make your technology a successful implementation?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the best scenarios that I can tell you about when it comes to utilizing Smithers in your environment is especially for help desks. So we actually have a help desk where they use it for nights and weekends. So this is your off time support. Most of the help desk and customer service companies, people who do help desk and or customer service, what they're doing is they're hiring consultants, outside consultants for these inbound calls that they get. So these call centers, they ramp up, and a lot of times they don't necessarily have that level of support on nights and weekends because it's expensive, right? To be able to manage that. So an AI solution is great for that as an augmentation of their team. And so what they were able to do in literally 5 minutes is to implement Smithers into their environment as a help desk. And what happens there is that basically Smithers looks at their website. Smithers looks at any other FAQs that they quickly can enter in as they do it as well. And then what they're also able to do now is they're adding more of their standard operating procedures, these documents that they have, whether it be in document format or whether it's in a database format. They're able to upload a lot of data into Smithers to make it actually smarter about the way that it answers their requests for problems that are coming in. And so we were able to integrate that into their CRMs that they use internally to be able to create tickets, to be able to, support their internal teams as well, and to let people, to let the internal teams know when it couldn't answer a specific series of questions. Here's all the things that it tried with the user and the kinds of questions that the user was able to tell it more and more detail about, so that by the time an actual person gets to it, they actually have tons of information to go off of. And then from there, they can solve the problems much faster. So that's been a really great implementation of the technology. We can also use it for sales as well, but for support and for customer support and help desks, this is bar none. It's some of the best technology that you'll have for a very inexpensive cost.
Okay. Well, the question that came to my mind is, how big are these companies? Because for sure, those who could afford call center services, since I'm from the Philippines, so I have an idea of the call center environment, but call centers usually require a lot of money, as you said, and only the big companies can afford it. So are your clients like small to medium businesses, or?
So the great thing about Smithers is we actually cater to lots of different sizes of businesses. Let's just hypothetically say that you're an entrepreneur. You're just a single guy, solopreneur, and you just need some assistance answering the phone. As a consultant or as a plumber or, as any kind of a solo type of a person, dentist office, whatever, it's really hard to be on the phone answering sales related types of questions and then also doing the work, right? So Smithers actually does that for you as well. We call that like lead generation. So let's hypothetically say that you're a new entrepreneur and you want to create like a lead generation type of business as a side hustle. You can use Smithers to do that. You could actually have it, and you could put up an ad that says, call this phone number. So you can actually call the phone number, or it can be a chatbot on your website. It doesn't matter. There's a few ways that you can actually approach and use Smithers, either as a chatbot on your website or as a full page chatbot or even as a phone assistant for you. So from the small business perspective, maybe you're not looking for support because maybe you don't have a lot to support. Maybe you just simply want to have it answer phone calls. If you look on our website, we've got at www.meetsmithers.com, we've got some demos up, and a lot of them are actual use cases where we, from zero to working implementation, is literally like 5 minutes of working implementation. And the owners of the businesses are just floored because in 5 minutes, this thing does just as good as a job of selling your business as a person that has been trained in your business would do. It's pretty incredible of what it can do for your specific industry. So it works for any size organization. If you're small and you want to have it as a sales bot, works great. If you're mid-sized or larger, or maybe you just want to start supporting your products, like, if you are, so some of the customers that we are looking at are service-based organizations where they, are supporting, products that they, have, like electronics or software that they may have, and they're trying to support those things. It works great for those smaller organizations as well, that are, just creating like these customer support types of businesses as well. So it doesn't matter the size of the organization, whether you're trying to use it for sales to begin with, as a lead generation type of a tool, or if you really need to get more detailed and use it as a larger organization, or to make your organization seem larger, for example, then you can support your products as well. It works great.
As you said, like one of the advantages of these systems, and which I've a core technology plus the additional layers that Smithers added to it that integrated the client side and everything, is that it's so fast to set up, which like in at least in Europe, right, would lead to a lot of skepticism, saying like, how can this be so fast? Like, what's the trick behind it? So I think it's good to discuss a bit like the major components of the technology to explain how it can be so fast. So as we discussed before going on here, the underlying layer technological layer is basically retrieval augmented generation, right? So I'm just going to introduce, of course, I'll let you expand on that, which basically is composed of two major elements, actually three. So there is a large language model like ChatGPT. There is a database full of documents, and those documents can be a lot, but can be even a single page with the frequently asked questions that people ask the business. And then there is a vector database, which is basically a store where the digital footprints of these documents are stored. Those are the three major components. And the nice thing is that it does not require training like other machine learning systems would work. And that's why it's so fast. And then like,Hoz, could you tell our listeners a bit more like how it works, like the general workflow? Of course, without going too technical, because I always try to keep it business friendly, but just general approach of the workflow. So a call comes in, there's the first question, what happens?
Yeah, absolutely. So the world has changed now. This whole ChatGPT AI model that's come along has really changed dynamically the capabilities. Before we were working with the new ChatGPT style model, we actually coded my own language model, if you will, and it was all English based, and it was hard because there was some missing pieces that the ChatGPT model actually allows for things to do. So what that's actually done for us is it allows for us to capitalize on the machine learning capabilities that are built into the generalized model. So the way that our technology works is it does use that ChatGPT engine to capture all of that generalized knowledge. Now, the way that we've formulated it so that it's not answering random questions that are completely not even applicable to your business or your industry or anything is we actually ask you as part of the setup, what's your business? What do you guys do? And then we have one question that we ask for you to fill out. And that is, what is the main focus of the sales and the services and the products that you offer that you want for our bot to focus on in that particular area? So if it's a help desk bot, we tell it, hey, you're a help desk bot, and you're going to focus on supporting these particular technologies. So that's one of the things that we do to help train the model really quickly so that it stays focused on your specific industry. We just simply answer a couple of questions. What is your industry? And what products and services do you want to focus on as part of your sales or as part of your support? And then from there, we then can allow for it to get even smarter. Right at the beginning, though, it's just utilizing the generalized knowledge that's already been captured by the large language model. So that alone does all the work, which is great. But what we've done as well is we now allow for you to get more detailed by adding in more of the documentation that you need for your business, such as your website. You tell us what your website is, and now we're reading from your website. So that's another key feature of what we're doing. The next thing is that we're also allowing for you to upload any documentations that you may have. That can come in the form of FAQs that you might have about your business or your things, and it can come in the form of these SOPs, these standard operating procedure documents that you may have. And then we go into the form of being able to also look at your databases as well for even deeper root of knowledge as well. So we use all of those tools to help train our bot, your bot, as quickly as possible. It works great because you can keep iterating and making it smarter as time goes on. But right from the beginning, the large language model does a lot of great work for you. It's generalized, but it's very specific and focused. It's not going to be, so this is where the trust thing comes in. Can you actually really trust that this is providing you good information? And we've narrowed that scope down so well that it really is providing you very focused information based off of the industry that you've told it to focus on.
So just to picture it, like your program itself, because it's so constrained, you don't let it give the liberty to like get information from elsewhere that could make, quote unquote, the machine hallucinate, which is usually the risk. I think of LLMs. Correct me if I'm wrong, Gabriela.
Yeah, like hallucination is one of the risks because it could give false claims to the user, but it really depends on the use case. Like if you're answering like general questions that don't have serious implications, then like some random occasional hallucination is acceptable in general. Of course, if you're making a chatbot for a clinic, for example, it's different. So it cannot be applied everywhere. And that's one of the risks. And then there's a scale up also issue that this approach out of the box usually works very well if your business is very constrained and the amount of information is constrained, which is actually a very interesting proposition for small and medium businesses that are not, they don't have decades of knowledge base to search into, just maybe some tens of pages or a website, so on, and it works well. Because when you scale up, with a general model, it can get tricky to find the relevant information. So you would need a more dedicated, fine-tuned model. But I think like the great advantage of these systems, like the one implemented in Smithers, is really that it can enable offloading some of the front desk activities to AI, even when the business is small or medium, or even a solopreneur, like you said. So that's really cool. And actually, though, like it is interesting that the fact that underlying the system there is a large language model, it imposes some constraint on the pricing model as well.
Really?
Right? So, like I think if you want, you can give us an idea of how the pricing works, and then we can relate it to the technology, which was not the case with the previous, like intent retrieval technology, where you could have more freedom in defining your pricing.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that we've done our pricing is we've kept it to the way that most of the businesses think about call centers, because that's where we started our focus. We really wanted our focus to be on how can we augment the call center. So whether that's the inbound, we're also soon going to be working on outbound as well. But those inbound calls where you're trying to, manage people calling about your business and figuring out, is your business really the right fit for them? That initial call is really what we're going after from a sales perspective. And then, of course, for the help desk perspective, it's all about, how can I get the most bang for my buck for just those initial triaging of help desk types of calls? How do I manage that as inexpensively as possible, as efficiently as possible? So we work on the per minute basis, basically. We're basically charging, we start off with like a 200-minute bucket, and that's $60 for a 200-minute bucket. And then as your time goes up with the number of bots that you have times the number of minutes that you have for those bots, we also apply lots of different discounts at different levels as well too. But nevertheless, it's from a per minute charge. If you look at it on an hourly basis, you're well under $3 an hour for a bot working for you, as opposed to, doing it with an actual a person in place. So it saves tons of money for the customer, for the company that's actually trying to implement this from a cost perspective. If you needed to hire a salesperson to do that role, it's a little bit more expensive than $3 an hour to manage a salesperson, plus commissions, plus whatever else that may be going on, plus the training to get them up to speed on how to answer the phone appropriately. Whereas this, within 5 minutes, is answering the phone very well. You'll be surprised at how many people have done the tutorial, just gone through the first 5 minutes, called their bot, and are amazed with how much it actually knows about their business, their industry, and they did nothing at all besides just tell it what they're doing. So it's amazing the kind of cost that you're actually managing versus actually then having an actual person doing that particular initial role. The experts are going to always be necessary. So we're not putting those people out of business at all. It's just those initial calls. We can automate that to a certain level, and with that, save you tons of money.
Well, I'll try to play the devil's advocate here.
Yeah, wait a second. First,
Okay.
I wanted to complete, Colin gave us a nice view of the pricing, which I think it's very interesting because $3 an hour, it's a pretty low entrance barrier. So that's cool. And as I was saying, it has to be by the hour. I want to say never, but it's very unlikely that you find this kind of solution with an all included, unlimited, because underlying it needs to call the APIs of the large language models, which let's say bill you by the word. So it's there's a direct relationship between word and time. On average, people, they don't speak so fast. I think that's a good thing, that people don't speak so fast. So in the end, by the hour, it's not that many words. But you cannot have this all unlimited, You cannot say, okay, you are a big company like Coca-Cola, I don't know, $50,000 a month, and it's unlimited. You cannot do it because you can very easily go out of business very fast.
Absolutely.
Yeah. True.
Yeah, so it's but if you look at the hour, as I said, it's really cheap. Actually, I thought it would have been a bit more expensive. So it's good job, I would say.
Yeah, but given this case, do your clients prefer using a chatbot or a voice assistant for the smithers? Because it could be either audio form or text form, and I think the way they communicate also matters for your clients.
Yeah, so that's a great question because, when we were first developing this technology, that was something that I looked into very heavily is it better to have a person versus an AI? And that's going to depend on the style of business that you're in and the culture of business that you're in. In some cases, it's not going to work. And I truly understand and appreciate that, because in some cases, you really do need that hand-holding that a person can offer. And that's important. Now, we're bridging that gap pretty immensely with our technology because it is responsive. We're getting better at the voices as well. That's a thing that we want to make sure that we're able to do to make that sound even more human than it does. And right now, it's actually pretty good, but we're actually finding ways to make it even better. So that's a plus. But regardless, the technology, from a technology perspective, it's going to have its place. And where it has its place is where people are trying to figure out ways to save and cut corners wherever they can so that they can grow faster. And that's a key factor, right? When you're a startup, you don't really have a lot of options to hire a large inbound or outbound sales team. It's just not feasible to do those kinds of things. And having something that can hit the ground running is pretty important. If you're a help desk, there's so many complaints in a help desk scenario. that, I mean, literally, there's thousands of people that complain about that the person that they got the first time didn't tell them that their technology or the thing that they really needed to focus on was this particular piece of technology and not that where they got placed into. And it took them weeks to figure out that, oh man, it wasn't this that we needed to focus on all this time. We really should have focused over here. And they could have saved so much time in that initial triage. Whereas our technology helps to get that initial triage done way faster, just way faster.
Okay, so like for example, I'll make a hypothetical use case like airline company, like there was some error, what like something happened, so the customer wants a refund. To what extent can Meet Smithers go like till the point that it can refund the customer, or till just like at the start of the triage, just collecting all the data?
Absolutely. So with consulting, so we do offer consulting because that's going to, when you get more into the details of the workflow required for your specific business, that's going to take consulting. And so we do offer consulting where we can come in and have Smithers actually go through lots of different workflows that you think are important. If your business wants the workflow to allow for automation of refunds, we can offer that. We can do that. We can integrate it with a lot of your internal systems just through standard API calls. Depending on how complicated your scenario is, we can usually pretty quickly get those kinds of things done. But that's consulting at that point.
Yeah, like the consulting part is how to integrate the API calls and the workflow of the chatbot. So, of course, that's customized. My curiosity is here, like, how many people actually do not realize that they're speaking with an AI?
Yeah, we don't let that happen. That's important. I don't like that. I don't like it when people try to cheat and say, "Oh, wow, I didn't know I was talking to a person." Right from the get-go, Smithers introduces itself as an automated assistant right from the beginning. So that way you know, and the expectation isn't, "Oh, I didn't know I was talking to an actual person." I don't like that, as it's just kind of like and I've seen some people do that, and I think it's a little fraudulent, in my opinion. I like to know what I'm getting myself into right from the beginning of the conversation. So that way the expectation isn't, "Oh, well, this person told me something and blah, blah, blah." And then you have to tell them later on, "By the way, you were talking to a robot." That just might make people pissed off at that point. That's never the intention. The intention really is to let people up front know the expectation so that they have a certain level of expectation. And then some people are like, "Oh, I didn't know I was talking to a robot." And as soon as they talk to a robot, they're like, "I want to talk to a person. I don't care whether this thing is great or not. I like people." We offer that option as well too. If you're chatting and someone says, "I need to talk to a person right now," we have something called live chat where your company can subscribe to live chat. And now they can be chatting with an actual human if they prefer. And if it's a phone call, we offer the option of telling us what support phone number to then call. And then if a person says immediately, "I got to talk to a person," then it will try to transfer that phone call to the support person as well. And they're letting them know all the details. They can see all of that in the background CRM as well.
Yeah, I think it's the best way to go. Like, also because, as you said, pretending to be a human would be a very fragile approach, because right now...
Fraudulent, I think. Fragile or fraudulent?
Well,
it's a
I
delicate...
think both.
Yeah.
Like, because right now it's still pretty obvious in most cases that the AI is an virtual and not real assistant. So it's like, it's better to be very upfront and say, "Hey, I'm a virtual assistant. I think I can help you. Let's try. If you're not satisfied, there's always the human handover. I just send you to speak with the human assistant." So it is good. But can you give us some example of businesses where you already have implemented this, just to give an idea of what could be possible candidates, and then also some example of businesses which would not be good candidates.
So businesses that are good candidates, we've got a wide range of them. So we've got a tree company we've got a good number of customers now, but we got a tree company that they're using it as a means of just, that frontline sales support, making sure that the person that's calling in is actually in their area, because they get a lot of people that call in that are not in their area. And so we can't service you. And so our bots, instantly tells the person based off of where they're saying that they're located, we can't service your area because we're not in that state. We're not in that county or whatever the case may be. So we've got a couple of scenarios like that. We've got a book publisher that just recently signed on. And her business is all about just, the binding of physical books and things of that sort. And so she was floored with the fact that literally in 5 minutes, I'm going to be putting this video up soon as well. Literally within 5 minutes, the business knew questions, like she's asking it about the process and how the publishing happens, and it knew how to answer those kinds of questions. That's saving her as a solopreneur tons of time from answering those kinds of questions online for her customers. We've got the help desk scenario as well, where we've got a company that's a large organization. They actually support lots of different software clients and customers, and they're able to quickly get Smithers up and running for their business to a point where now it is handling a lot of their first line calls that they get, and then it goes to the second levels and third levels and things of that sort as necessary. And so there's a lot of advancements that we're going to be working on with them as well, because they want more integration of Smithers now to handle a lot more of the details of the workflows that happen inside of their environment as well too. Scenarios where Smithers doesn't possibly work. And it's hard because a lot of our calls, when people are calling us about, can Smithers work for my business? Our software is triaging those guys out, so I don't necessarily see a lot of those things that come through. But I can tell you that in the way our software does that, by the way, is it actually puts a green flag right next to customers that you definitely need to call back. This was a great conversation from a sales perspective, and the customer really had some great questions that they were asking. They're very intrigued. Either it's already set up an appointment for you, because Smithers can set the appointment for you as well, put it on your calendar. So we get those calls a lot where people are, calling us and they're really intrigued by the technology, and then it just sets the appointment. And by that time, the customer's already asked, lots of questions about our business. And so we kind of know of who to call. But I've seen, I think, some where the customer is, really concerned about, I don't know if my people that call me would like to talk to a robot. We're not the fit for that guy, right? So if they're more concerned with the personal human touch, then that means that they're willing to pay more for that, and that's perfect. There's going to always be a place for that. So I think that where your business is more personable, more human-to-human interaction, and that's kind of like a requirement. I have a guy that has a brokerage, a healthcare brokerage business, and he's mostly dealing with elderly people. And so in that case, the elderly people, they would just get tongue-tied when it comes to talking to anything that's not sounding like a person or whatever. And not only that, but they know their guy. They always talk to Michael. I always talk to Michael, and I just want to talk to Michael. They don't really want to talk to anybody else. So his business is he's a small business owner. He's got about 5 employees, and it's a healthcare brokerage. And all of his people have known Michael for 30 years. And so they don't want to talk to anybody else other than Michael. And he's got an answering service that literally It's amazing. But he's got an answering service that all they really do is take a message. It's basically an answering machine, but it's people that he buys for this. But the people feel comfortable just saying, "Hey, have Michael give me a call." It amazes me, but that's his business style. That's his right. So
Yeah.
I can't help that, right?
I would say, in my opinion, like, because we also provide these kind of services, what we do is more customized for more like niche areas where you need fine-tune the language model, maybe for the vectorization part. But like what I usually say to our customers is, it's very good. These kind of systems are very good if what you're selling, it's either low ticket, let's say, so the price of the person assisting the calls is relevant compared to the price of the goods you're selling, or when you need some sort of pre-qualification stage where people just ask some dumb questions, like, or you need to pre-qualify them, like, I don't know, you sell stuff that maybe it's a customized software that is $100,000 per year license, and like you want a system that pre-qualifies your customer, saying, okay, look, the system, our billing starts from 100,000. Like, are you interested? Because if you're not, I won't even connect you to the salesperson. So I would say those two scenarios work very well and cover like maybe 90% of the business out there. So I think there's a very wide range. What, in my opinion, doesn't work is when you're selling like high ticket solutions, because you don't get that many calls in general, and you really need the skilled salesperson to make the inquiring turn into a lead, and then into prospect, and then into a sale. I mean, at least until AI can duplicate Grant Cardone, and then, okay, we can we can speak again.
So when you say high ticket, it's like...
High ticket, I would say like not less than $1,000 per transaction, I would say. Yeah. And that's when you usually want to have a person speaking to make the sale happen. It's not that you couldn't use this technology. From a technological point of view, you can. It's more that if you use a human, your conversion rate will be higher. And so in the end, the math doesn't add up, right? Because you save something on the salespeople, but then you're losing some sales. So so it really depends on the average ticket, because if what you sell, I don't know, beauty creams, $50 a vial, for example, that's great. People just call, they have a lot of annoying questions, maybe about did you test this on animals, or is it good for my intolerance, or stuff like this. And you really don't want a human staying there and being paid maybe $30 an hour to answer these kind of questions that are always the same questions. And so, and all of these scenarios, and there's a lot, like the systems like Smithers are great. Okay. But again, if you're selling something that is, if you're persuading, for example, a mall to add your beauty line, like you want a salesperson to deal with that. It's just like the most convenient thing to do. This is at least my opinion. I don't know if you agree, Oz.
Well, so that's an interesting statement that you're saying there, because I was talking with a company yesterday. They sell water purifiers, and they have these high ticket water purifiers that sell like $2,000 and up for these systems. And it was an MLM type of a business. And the thing is that what I noticed about their sales model was that they had a few people on the phone call at the time. What they're trying to do is, get enough people in a room. It's a numbers game for them, trying to get enough people in the room. And you're right from the perspective of, a good salesperson can kind of swindle the person into the buy, even if they're not necessarily interested, right? So that's true. I use that word because it's kind of like that, really. It's like, the salesperson can convince the person on the phone because they know the right words. They know how to sway the person to that impulse buy at that point. Whereas an AI is not going to do that. It's not going to give you this impulse type of a scenario. And so, yeah, the salesperson that's really good may be able to capture more sales, but then he also captures more disgruntled customers at the same time. So it's kind of like, which way do you want to go in that regard? Because now the person is like, darn it, I didn't need this after all, and they just lost out a lot. Whereas if with an AI, you're going to immediately get the people who are automatically on the fence, they're going to be knocked out. But the people that are going through to the phone call, they've got a lot of their basic questions answered, and now they're really interested and they want to learn more. I dare say that you'd probably get higher results of happy customers if you did it that way. It's just whichever way is your approach.
Well, I have a few questions in mind, but I'll just try to break it one by one. I think the first question I thought of is, how empathic are the smithers, for example? Because I know there's the high ticket and the low ticket, but what, for example, would be the importance? Like having an empathic conversation, for example, it's bound to happen that there will be a caller, as you said, like in the brokerage company, someone who talks a lot. And then there should just be someone that says, oh, yeah, like just listening, even though it's not super useful. Does Smithers accommodate that too?
Absolutely. That's really cool about the technology is it actually will agree with you when something's great. It will, let you know, oh, wow, I'm sorry that happened. I'm sorry to hear that particular circumstance. That's not good, but we're going to make it right. It's got a lot of that already just pre-built in to really be responsive. And it answers you back in the way that you gave it. So if you're saying, I need to sell my home because, my dog died and I just need to get out of this bad scenario that I'm in, it's going to say, oh, wow, I'm really sorry to hear that your dog died and that's the reason why you need to sell your home. But let me tell you about some options. And then it's going to go from there. So it really does a great job at being supportive of the way that you're responding to it at that time.
That's nice. Then my question would be, I'll just let you ask first, then I'll come back with my question.
No, I think we actually discuss this technology like deep and sound. I think it's like in the end, as Oz says, like it ultimately ends up in being like a math issue. It's like, is this convenient for the business? It's like, do we need about only having warm leads, so we need to filter the leads, so we only want warm leads to come in? Or we really needed to persuade the not so warm leads, maybe a bit cold, and the ticket. So I think in general the technology is very cool, but you really need to understand that the business gain that you get from implementing that technology, it really is dependent on the business. So. But I think it's the kind of discussion that at Smithers, like you have with your potential customers, trying to understand if their business model is a good fit, or maybe if the business can be adapted to be a good fit. So that's also another approach. But and it's a technology that is on the rise right now, since when ChatGPT 3.5 has been released, so about a year. And it's actually interesting to see where this technology will lead. And I think a big factor that will determine how the technology and the business application will evolve is whether we are able to make it more efficient less expensive to use the core engine underlying it, because right now it's still not very convenient. Like, I think I think that Microsoft and OpenAI are actually losing money on this AI, so they're playing the game, but it is like, you have to picture that in order to answer a single person's question, you have a very powerful computer with a lot of hardware. Like, you have a machine that it's at least $100,000 for just to manage one conversation. So right now, OpenAI and other companies are really underselling because otherwise it wouldn't explode. And I think they're betting on the technology to get better and better. So at some point it will become profitable for them. And at that point, it might even be that we'll be able to have like on-premise, let's say, setup of this technology. And that would, again, open up an entire new scenario. I think, though, there is like, I hope this does not happen too fast, because there are a lot of economies in the world that rely on call centers, like India, like the Philippines.
Yeah.
So I hope personally that they have the time to transition from that business model to a new business model. I don't think it can be stopped, and I wouldn't want them to be stopped, because I think like most of this job is quite dull and repetitive, but they also need the time. So I think that's also an ethical issue that has to be addressed.
That's one of the ethical issues, and that made me realize like another ethical issue that maybe some people would ask, especially those in the European Union, would be the privacy. Like, can Smithers or like other similar tools be able to guarantee the privacy of the clients, of their customers' data, if they give their data?
That is a great question. And what we've done on our side to make sure that works that way is, first of all, the technology, the conversations that Smithers has do not support the language model. So that's first and foremost. They do not go back into training the language model itself. The second thing is that Smithers utilizes the data on your side. So we don't maintain the data. And there's a piece of it where, like, if you're uploading your own FAQs, sure, we're maintaining that data, but again, it's not being used to train the model. But then the rest of the data, like any documents that you upload or any databases that you attach or any workflows that you do, all of those exist behind your firewall. And so we just access all of that through an API call. And then we answer the conversation. And again, none of that goes back into the language model. So we hold privacy at the utmost importance of our customer data.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
And it's heavily important. It's heavily important. And then as far as the jobs thing is concerned, we're actually working on a blog article now that we'll be finished with soon. It talks about how Smithers, because you know what, I thought about this. I'm a Christian guy. I really find it very important to make sure that you give is just as much as you're taking, right? So I'm realizing that there's a lot of fear around AI is going to take jobs, and let's face it, every technology has done this since the beginning of time. I mean, in music, there's a thing called a compressor that actually, compresses the signal of loud and brings up the signal of soft things. Well, that used to be a person's job in the studio. He used to sit there and, read the sheet music and say, okay, they're going to get loud here and they're going to get soft there. So he would do that. Now there's a computer, there's a piece of hardware, and then there's a computer that does that job. So that guy's out of a job now, right? So technology has always done that throughout history, but this is no different. AI is going to be putting some people out of work, but we're looking at the opportunity now for those people to become entrepreneurs of their own especially when it comes to lead generation types of businesses. They could be helping their local community with Smithers. So you could have multiple, if you will, lead generation operations going on and letting Smithers triage all of that data. And then your job simply is to collect the good stuff that comes in and send it to the right customer. So there's a pizza shop that needs more business, more local business. You can advertise, let people call in for whatever rebates, discounts, whatever it is that you're willing to offer, and then send that to the pizza shop. There's a plumber that needs more business and he doesn't know how to do it. Well, you can let Smithers triage the right customers for that plumbing business, and then you can supply him the leads. So there's a lead generation business in this for everyone as well too. So we're looking at that as a way of potentially giving back jobs to the right people.
Before we end, I just want to ask last question. Do you also analyze the sales, the sales performance? So let's say they have all these conversations. Does Smithers also allow the clients understand the progress or what they could do better in their company, not just let it speak or reply?
So that will be an upgrade that we're looking into soon to be able to do. But at the moment, we're letting that type of job be done by your CRM.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, yeah.
With the last question.
Yeah, the last question for you, Oz, is what book would you recommend for our listeners?
Wow, what book would I recommend for the listeners? Well, I definitely do read quite a bit of material that's out there. When it comes to the whole AI technology thing of where the technology is going for AI, I haven't come across a good book just yet on which AI type of learning that you should be looking at. But a book that I'm reading now, because I read lots of different types of books on different types of technologies and things like that. And I definitely look at things like the E-Myth for business owners, because that really goes into why are you doing the types of businesses that you're doing. And there's a lot of, of good values that can be gleaned from books like the E-Myth about, the why you do certain things that you do. So that was important for me because, I am in this space of AI that's in some cases taking jobs and in other cases giving jobs. So I need to really focus on the why as to why I do things.
True. Yeah, it's a really good book. I could recommend it as well for people who have small, medium businesses.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you again, Oz, for this nice conversation.
Thank you, Oz. It's been a really interesting conversation, and I'm sure that it will be very useful for all of our listeners who will have the chance to understand a bit better how this new technology can be applied to their businesses. So thanks again for being with us, and Godspeed to Smithers.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So to anyone listening, all the details that you need to know about Meet Smithers and Oz will be in the show notes. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.